Alright, let's start again. I'm not sure how long I will stay trying to do this problem. I said before that I would do it for 10 hours, but I'm starting to feel that it's better to do it for 6 or 8 and then just look at the solution. Because I think the biggest problem is, like I said before, understanding the list methods and the string methods. And that's something that I think might be better for me to do off string. It's kind of harder to think on string because in order to solve this problem, I have to spend a lot of time thinking and just be quiet, and doing nothing. And that's kind of weird to do on string. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna spend 2 more hours now, then maybe take a break later, try again, and then if I can't do it, I'm just gonna look at the solution. I was seeing that she apparently did this, and she took around 2 hours, which is surprising to me because I thought that people that were experienced would do this problem a lot faster. But yeah, so I guess it's not such an easy problem as I thought that it should be. I think I'm gonna put some music on just so I can spend more time quiet and thinking instead of talking. So here's where I stopped. I was trying to think about a way to push the words into this empty array. And I wanted to use the rejects as parameters to put new stuff on the array. So I think I'm gonna search for how to insert an element to a list.
Hi everyone, in this lesson we're going to talk about it, how to add an element to the list in Python at certain position. So let's say we have some list, let's call it my list, and put inside that this list elements, for example, A, B, and D. Now let's say that we want to add letter C here at third position in our list. If we are looking our list, letter A is on the first position but has index 0, B is on the second position and has index 1, and D is at third position and has index 2. If we want to insert letter C here between letters B and D, that letter C will have third position and second index. So if we want to add letter C to our my list to be here, we will write my list and we'll use insert function and use two arguments. First argument will be position of our new letter, position will be here, so our letter C will have index 2. And second argument is what we want to insert in our list. We want to insert letter C to be just right here between letters B and D. So let's press enter and let's see our list. So our list is being populated by new letter C.
So I think I might run into the same problem, even though that I was running before, even when trying to use the same method, because it's gonna change the index when I add something there, I think. And because it's on a loop, then it's just gonna go on forever.
By using insert function, which inserts that letter C at third position. That means it has index 2. That's all in this lesson. Please like, share, and subscribe. Happy coding.
But how do I make it equal to a variable and stuff? It's just the same thing. It doesn't change anything. Doesn't matter if I do a new list or not, I think. Yeah, index is not applied. I wonder if there's a way to do it in Python, same way I do it on JavaScript. To make a for loop dependable on a variable. Maybe just words here. I don't think this will work, but yeah, just taking the string and not the index of the string. And if there's a way to search for Python loop that is something like this. Oh, that's the way. Firing range. I think they mentioned this on the lessons before, but I forgot. Oh, so this makes sense. I can do a while loop here outside of the this loop. Or maybe for I in range. Let me see if I'm getting it's correctly. I in range, then 5 or 4. It's gonna be maximum 5 numbers. So I think 5 should be okay because the index is gonna go through 6 for 5 for I in range 5. And I put I here. And I think I don't need to upgrade I each iteration because it does that automatically. Invalid syntax. Isn't the same thing here? Did I forgot thing? Maybe. Yeah. Jesus. No, that's the problem. It's gonna loop 5 times. It's really inefficient. Because every time that gonna loop times through this whole loop. And still running into the same problem, I think. Maybe not. Maybe I just have to put here. Now it's gonna stop now. So there's only 50 steps. So it's probably wrong. Takes 2 arguments. So let me think about it. We can do it this way as well. I'll try that way. Index 3. Oh, it's not working because it's splitting the string. That's why index is 3 and words is true here. Yeah. So never mind. That's the way. So it works. No, but now it's adding the wrong one because they just said it. Or maybe not. No, yeah. It's not quite right. And it's also gonna add way more than the original list. That's another problem. Maybe I don't need to use the item. And here it just puts this -1. I think I already tried that and it didn't work. $32 plus. And it's putting. I don't understand what it's putting here. Let me take this -1 out. Yeah, now it's correct. That's the issue. Because now it's adding all this stuff and leaving the sign behind. So once it adds this, it makes this be index 2 when it should be on the index 1. This makes it go to the end of the thing. At least somewhat works. So let me think, what can I do to solve this? So each time that it encounters a sign, an operator, it's gonna add the space before. And that's gonna change the index of the operator itself. Is is it is that what's happening? It might be possible as well that it's not pushing the operator. I think this is probably wrong, but I'm curious to see what's gonna happen if I do it like that. No, but it can't be operator because it's gonna be a different. The operator is just string, and I want the actual string on the list to be pushed, not the operator. Yeah, it just adds another one. What if I remove there? It doesn't make a difference because I want it to be before the operator, not after it. Then both the operator and the spaces are gonna be before after the all the other strings. What if I just try the way that I was doing before? Instead of creating a new one, I just try to push it to this one. This one was the whole list of the arrays, list of the strings. tell that it went wrong. This part of the thing. Oh, I forgot to change the name. List of words. Yeah, now it's the same problem as before. I forgot that this was happening before. Where it just keeps adding because the index changes. Maybe I can change the index as well. Oh, I'll be right back. Right back. So I wonder if I can do this. This is a function call, so I can't do operations on it, I think. Let's see. So how do I make a number equal to the index? I can initiate a variable here, I think. And then I can make I plus. Not here, it's here. Then I make I plus 1 here, plus equals 1. And I make plus 1 here as well. Let's see if this works. No, it's still failing. Oh, like it's because I'm initiating again on the loop every time. So maybe I have to initiate the variable outside of the loop. This is different than before, the snaps. Oh, that's the issue now. That's gonna add 2 of them. Every time that is yeah, and then it's gonna mess up the other ones as well. Because the index changed. So I can't make the count based on the index. Maybe instead of looping through the thing, oh, I actually have to loop through the list. I was gonna say maybe I can do the for I range, but then I don't think it's gonna work. Isn't there another method? To see.
In this video, we're going to see how we can add an item to a list in Python. Let's imagine that we have a list that represents some people who work for a particular company. And these people's names are something like Julia, Eric, and Dylan. Now let's say that this company decides to hire a new person, so I need to put a new person inside of my list. The generic way to do this is to use the insert method of list objects in Python. This requires that I tell the insert method where I would like this person to end up in my list, and then I choose the person I would like to insert. In this case, we can add Jill to my company. And when I look at my company list, we see Jill here, now in position 0. There is a second method for doing this in Python, specifically for adding new elements to the end of a list. And this method is called Append.
Not
So
gonna.
we're always adding to the end, and see that in my company, and removing data from the end is
Must be a better way.
In this video, we will understand how to add an element to a list in Python in 4 different ways: using list.append method, using list.extend method, using list.insert method, and using concatenation operator. Python list append method is used to add an object to a list. This object may be an individual element or another object, such as a list, tuple, dictionary, or a string. Define a list of numbers. Invoke append method on this list. Append method takes the element to be added as argument. So this will add 4 at the end of list. Let's print the list before and after appending the element. Look, the element is added to the list. With append, you can add a list or tuple to the list. Let's append a list and tuple. Remember that the list or tuple are added as it is. Look how the newly added list and tuple are added completely. To show this, let's print the type of these elements. Look, the types are list and tuple respectively. So, you can use append method to create a list of lists or a list of tuples as well. Python list insert function allows you to add an element at any position or index in a list. Insert takes 2 arguments. First is the index at which the element will be inserted. Second is the element to insert. Elements of Python list have numeric indexes beginning with 0, which is the index of first element. To insert an element at first position, the index will be 0. Let's insert 0 as the value. Now, we will insert a value at the end of the list. There are a total of 4 elements in the list till this point, and the index of last element will be 3 since the indexes start with 0. So, the index of new element shall be 4. Let's assign a value to the element. Print the list after insert. Look, the elements are added at the beginning and the end of the list. This is not a correct way of adding element to the end of list. This is because we assign the index of last element ourselves. In real-world applications, we would not be knowing the index of last element of the list. If you notice, the index of last element of the list is equal to the total number of elements in the list minus 1. So, the index of new element to be added will be the same as the total number of elements in the list. In other words, it will be equal to the length of the list. To calculate the length of the list in Python, len function is used. Get the length of the list and replace this value as the index of last element. Look, the element is added to the end of the list. Python list extend function accepts an iterable as argument and adds all the elements of that iterable to the end of list. Iterable means a structure that can be iterated such as a list, set, tuple, dictionary, string, etc. Let's add a list of 2 elements to the original list. Next, add a set of 2 elements. Run the program. Look, the elements of list and set are added to the list. If a dictionary is provided as an argument, extend function will only add its keys to the list. Let me show this by supplying a dictionary to extend function.
You have the wrong
Look, the keys of dictionary are added to the end of the list. To add a single element to a list with extend function, provide the element as a list, as shown. Extend only accepts an iterable as argument. If a single value, which is not an iterable, is supplied to extend, it will raise a type error. Look. Concatenation operator, represented by +, may also be used to append a list to another list.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Python 3 Basics video. In this video, what we're going to be talking about is list manipulation within Python. So the last video we talked about tuples versus lists, and we said that lists are mutable, which means we can manipulate them, change them, and all sorts of fun stuff. And there's a lot of built-in things that we can do with lists, so we don't have to program our own ways around it. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to need an example list. So let's just make an example list. You do not have to copy my exact list. Feel free to make your own. I'm just making numbers up right now. There's my list. So now the next thing that we want to do is, like, let's say you've got this list and you want to add something to it. You see we only have 1, 2, 3, 4 2s. We want one more 2. So let's say we want to add another 2. Well, that's going to be append, right? So it's just like writing files, right? Append, you're just adding something to the end. So we can do the following: x.append 2. And what this is going to do is it's going to modify this x variable, okay? So it's just going to automatically add this. So it's changing the variable of x. So now when we print x, we can run this. And we see that we started with 7 2, now it's 7 2 2, okay? So that's how we can add add information. So a list can really contain anything. So I was going to say add a number, but actually you can add numbers. You can really add any sort of Python data type. You can boom, shove it in there. So a Python list doesn't have to be just numbers or strings. And so you can do a lot of really fun stuff with this, especially later on we'll talk about dictionaries, which you can do even more fun stuff with. But anyway, more on that later. Now, what if you want to insert a number or add a number, and you don't want it to go to the end? Well, you use insert, which is what I was thinking. That's why I said it. But anyway, you use insert. So instead of append to, let's say we want to insert 2. And what we can do, the first, I might have these flipped. The first one is where you want to insert it. So the element ID that you want, where you want to insert it. And then the second one is what is the value that you want to insert. So let's say we want to insert into index of 2, and we want to insert 99. So we actually are positive that we inserted it correctly. So let's do that. So let's save and run that. All right, so in the second index spot, so again, this is 0th, 1st, 2nd, we did enter a 99. So that's how you can insert data exactly where you want it. So sometimes append isn't exactly what you want. Now, what if you actually want to remove data? So we've talked about how we add, how do we get rid of data? Well, simple as remove, x.remove, and this is going to remove the first example. So here we have a lot of 2's. Let's say we want to get rid of one of the 2's. We'll just do 2. We'll print x. So this list will do 5, 6, 1 basically, because we removed the first 2 from this list. Simple enough. The other thing that we could do is you can remove, say you wanted to remove the third element, or let's get this 2 removed again, but let's say we want to remove it a little differently. So we can remove like this. We can say remove the x 2, right? So we do something like that, and we've still removed that 2. So we're saying here we want to remove the third element in the list, but the index value of 2, right? So that is the third element, but anyway. So that's how you do that. So that's how you can remove not only the specific number, or you can even reference the number that you want to remove using the list that you're trying to remove from. The next thing that we want to do is we already know that we can reference that with this. So again, we showed it in the last video, but just in case you forgot, you can reference data. So x, the item in x, the list of x, right, with an index value of 5. So that should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be a 7. So even run that. Sure enough, it's a 7.
I just thought about something. I can also search for the regex on the list while I'm looping. No, but it's the same thing actually.
7. That's how we can reference that data. Another thing we can do is what's called slicing. So we can get a slice of this data. So say we want to get x from the element ID of, or index of 5 to the index of 7. We can get that slice. So it prints 7, 2, and it stops. It goes from the first element, right, and then it goes up to the ending element. So as you can see, we didn't get 3. We got 2 elements. So we printed the index of 5, the index of 6, and then it stops because it had reached 7. So again, here we go. There's a few more elements for you. So we'll close out of this. So that's how you can access a slice. Also, if you want to access, maybe, let's say you want to access the last element of a list, you would use -1. So that will give us a 2. Okay, you can do the same thing. You can say -2. That will give us a 7. Okay, so that's how you can kind of go to the end of a list as well. So now, one of the other things I want to do is we can say print, let's say x. Say we want to print, say you want to know what, let's say you want to get rid of the 6, or let's see if we have, okay, 1 is only occurs once. Let's say you want to get rid of the number 1 in this list, but you don't know it's a number 1, or you want to know the element ID of number 1. Let's just say for whatever reason you want to know the index value of the number 1 in this list. What you would do is x.index 1. So this is just going to tell us what is the index value of 1. Right now this doesn't make sense, but I'll show you in a moment why this will be useful to get the index value. Right now it might not matter to you, but what happens is when you have 2 lists that are in relation to each other, and you can get the element or the index value of one item in its list, you can immediately find the corresponding value in the other list.
Probably not gonna find anything. Searching for this. Probably don't even need this list of arrays. Yeah, list just string is the string. I think I can probably loop through the string instead and search for the regex.
Hello and welcome to my channel Python and Ubuntu. Today's question is how to insert a variable inside a string. Now let's say we have a template as below. Dear, we insert a name here. Your appointment has been booked on particular date at a particular time. Please make sure to reach 15 minutes before the appointed time. Now, how can I add name, date, and time for different bookings using the same template? That is the question. So let's look at this. Let's first print this out. Okay. Let's print this out. Let's remove this initially. I'll explain why. Now, when you're printing it out, you can see that it's not in the proper format. I mean, it's not in the template. You can see that after name, the sentence continues. But I want it in the second line. So what can we do? One method is you can insert an escape sequence, and that is you put a backslash and n. Now, if you run it, flap and you can see that it comes down. Okay, it goes to the second line. But even better method is by using triple quotes. Now, what do you mean by that? So let's write print, and now I'm pressing single quotes 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now, if we copy, let's copy this and paste it here. You can remove this escape sequence and you just press enter. You can see that.
That's not what I want.
But even better is, let's enter here also and run it question. Now, next one is time. Time equal to, let's say, 10 a.m. Okay. These are the 3 variables that we require. Now, I'm going to show you one of the easiest way to do this. Then we'll move on to the usual way that others use. This method is only applicable if your Python is updated beyond 3.6. If it is 3.6 or above, then only this function will work. So it's one of the good reasons to update your Python. Now let's copy this. So let's paste it here. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to insert curly braces here. I'm going to remove the parenthesis. And I'm going to insert curly braces here. We have missed out on one single detail, after which the technique is named. If you write 2020, the only thing that you need to do is run this and run this again. You can see that here is method name. It's not 3.6 or above. Now, if you're stuck, but inside you wouldn't write the name, you just leave it blank. Let's do this, leave this blank. Then, after the sentence is over, after the string, you put dot, then you write format, then you put parenthesis, and you write 3 variables: name, date, and time. Now, let's run this. Okay, sorry, I forgot to remove the F string.
I think there's a kind of a hack way to do this, but I don't think it's right. That I just thought about it. You could just write this string and assign it to a variable with the formatting and do it exactly like the guy did. But instead of the variables, you just put the numbers that you get from the other string. This might be a lot easier way to do it. So you just type it out exactly what you want the string to look like and substitute the variables accordingly. But the issue is that the amount of problems is gonna vary as well. But it could create a loop for the first model, and then depending on the length of the overall list, you would repeat the pattern. But it feels like kind of like cheating because so it would be something like the number, yeah, the value of the numbers will have to change as well. This would be 1, then if there's more than 2, you put it like this. Oh yeah, and there's the new line and the other stuff as well. I think I won't do it that way though.
So let's remove f. Now let's run this again. See, DMSQT, your management booklet 20 July 2020 at 1:30 p.m. Now what is the issue with this? Now this looks simple enough because you're only changing 3 variables and the sentence is also small. Now what if this was one huge paragraph and you have to replace at least 5 or 6 of them? Then you have to make sure that this is in the correct order. I'll show you just now what happens if it is not. I'm going to change. If you accidentally write like this, date, time, comma, name, and run this, you can see that this is not what we want. And this issue doesn't happen with f-string because we're literally putting the name or the date or the time where it is required. So there is no possibility of confusion in that. Now what if you have written this? There's one way around this. Now if you can see that it's date, time and name and it's always index position. So date has
There's an easy way to test. I think that's all I need to change there. Did he change this one? Oh yeah, I did because it's the value depends on the string. I need to print this two string instead. Yeah, it didn't work. Doesn't add anything, apparently.
Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to explain to you how to access characters in a Python string. Accessing characters in Python string is really very easy. We can access a character of Python string by using indexing. What I mean by indexing. In Python, if you define a string like this, each element of this string has an index. What that means. The first element of this string, which is in this case p, has an index 0. The second element has an index 1, the third element has an index 2, and so on. Be careful, even the space, you see the space has an index. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the space has an index 6. If I want to access any character of this string, I need to know what's the index of that character. And then I need the variable name, which is in this case s, square brackets, then I pass the index of the character that I'm interested in. And this one is going to return the character at this index. For example, if I want to access the first element, I need variable name, square brackets, and then I pass 0 because the first character has an index 0. And this one is going to return the first character, which is in this case p. Another important thing that I want you to know is that in Python, we have this index, which is I call positive index, start from the 0, 1, and so on. And we have another indexing, which is the negative indexing. And the negative indexing starts by -1 at the last element. So the last element has an index -1, the one before the last indexes. For example, if I want the last and then we pass the index of the first element. We know that the first element has an index 0. So we can pass 0, then we return that element. And at the same time, we know that that element or any element in Python of minus 1, and we're going to get the last element. So whenever you need the last element in Python, just pass minus 1, and you're going to return the last element of your character. But if you want to use the positive indexing, you have to count, right? Or you have to know the length of the string, and we will know this one in another video. But if I want positive indexing, I have to know what is the positive indexing. This one depends on the length of the string. Sometimes 18, sometimes 17, we don't know. So we have to count, or we have to know the length of my string. And in this case, I know the length of my string. It's the last element have an index 17, so we get the same result. But as you can see, it's more convenient to use the negative one because we know that the last element had an index minus 1. Let's say
Hi everybody, this is Sam with Python Basics. Thanks for joining us today. Today's video is how to handle and replace multiple characters. Just realized I spelled multiple wrong. Multiple characters with string replace or something else. So if you're new here, thanks for joining us. This is what we do. We do micro videos, one subject upon a time, and we're actually going to blend this into our API video for our Ameritrade stock screener. So like I said, if you're new here, thank you very much for joining us. We have, let's see, we have over 800 videos. We have a Discord server. We have a GitHub repository. We have everything you can think of. So all right, let's just go ahead and throw this in here. So our dilemma right now is we need to Windows does not like spaces, and it does not like special characters for our file names. And the reason why we're doing this is how to handle multiple files, automated file generation names. So what came to thought was, this is a challenge that we had a while ago, was time. I don't have to come up with a name because time is constantly moving, so the name is going to be different, and it's arbitrary. I don't care what it is. It's a pickle file. But then I noticed that I had a problem. So I couldn't just leave this because Windows would throw up all over the place. So then the dilemma came, well, I need to replace these. Well, I got two different types, so I have to do this twice. So the search began. So I started looking, and there's actually 3 ways to do it. So let's just look at it, and there are 2 clumsy ways. One's a little less clumsy than the other, and then there's a very elegant and eloquent way to do it. So let's just go ahead and jump after it. So let's see. So the first one is going to be, so file equals file dot replace. So we're going to utilize replace, and it goes old and new. So I want to get rid of first the space, and I want to replace that with an underscore. All right. Now I could do this then. So let's see. Should have done print. All right. So let's throw in file. All right. So there we go. So then I have to come and go file equals file dot replace. Then I go boom. Then underscore, and I run. So I have to do this twice. Okay. Then, of course, I'm looking through, and I see that, oh, I can just tab this on, replace, and then I can go here, and then my underscore. Oops. So then I go through, and I have this all in one line, but this is a little odd. So now I can also use a for loop for. So I have my change, and here are the characters that I want to change: a space and this are multiple. Because this is what I want to point out. If you have 5 different types of characters, you would have replace all the way off your screen. This gets a little neater and cleaner. I find this being best practice. So there we go, guys. Absolutely great.
Hey there, how's it going, everybody? In this video, we'll be learning about Python data types, and specifically we'll be learning about how to work with textual data. And textual data in Python are represented with strings. So we currently have open our intro.py file that we were working with in the last video, where we just printed out hello world. And I'll go ahead and run this so that we can see that down here it does print out hello world. Now, this line here is using the print function, and we're passing this text value into that print function. Now, if we wanted to create a variable that holds that text value, then we could say, I'll just get rid of this comment for now. So if I wanted a variable to hold that value, then I can just create a variable, and we'll call that message, and we'll set that message variable equal to our text value that we passed in to print. And here, message is our variable name. So if you're coming from another language, then you might be wondering if we need to use semicolons or something like that to end each line, but Python doesn't need that. It operates on white space alone, which makes it a very clean language to work with. Now, by convention, our variables are usually all lowercase, and if it's multiple words, then we separate those with underscore. So if instead my variable name was my message, then it would be my underscore message. So that's just a convention that's commonly used. And also, these variable names should be as descriptive as possible as to what values they're meant to hold. So message is a good variable name here because it's holding our message. But if I was instead to call this variable m, which is a valid variable name, but anyone reading my code now wouldn't know when they see this m variable what value it's supposed to hold. So message is a much better variable name in this case. So this message variable now holds our text data, and our text data is called a string. Now we can use our variable in place of this string anywhere that we use it in our program. So instead of printing out hello world directly here, I'm instead going to now print out this variable, and that should give us the same result. So if I run that, then you can see down here we still get the same result. Now we can see that I created this string with single quotes. Now you can also use double quotes. So if you're wondering if there's a difference between the single quotes and the double quotes, then it really just depends on what text you have in your string. So for example, if you have a single quote in your string, so for example, let's create one with a single quote. Instead of hello world, I will instead make our string Bobby's world. Now see, the problem here is that Python sees this single quote within our text as being the end of the string, and it's not going to know what to do with what comes after that single quote here, because it thinks that's where the string is closing. So if you run this now, then you'll get an error. Now there's a couple of different ways to handle this. We could escape this single quote with a backslash. So if I escape that single quote and now run this, now Python knows that this single quote doesn't close out the string, and that instead this one should. Now another way to handle that is to instead, so I'll take away that escape character. Now another way to handle that is to instead just use double quotes on the outside of our string, any string that contains single quotes. So if we know that our string contains a single quote, then we can instead use double quotes on the outside, and then it'll know that that single quote isn't the end of the string. So now if we run this, then we can see that it still works fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean that double quotes are better, because it goes both ways. If your string contains double quotes in the message, then I would use single quotes on the outside. Now if we needed to create a multi-line string, then one way we can do this is by using 3 quotes at the beginning and end of our string. And these can also be single or double quotes as well. So let's go ahead and look at an example. So I'll add 3 quotes to the in function, which stands for length. So whenever I print out here, if I was, instead of printing my message, if I was to print out this length function and pass in message and then run this, now we're no longer printing out our message, we're printing out the length of our message. And we can see that it says that the length of our string is 11. And if we counted these up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, then we can see that that's correct. And we can access our string's characters individually. So to do this, we can use the square brackets after our string and pass in the location of the character that we want. So I'll say print message and then square brackets. Now the location is called an index, and it starts out at 0. So to access the first character of our string, we can say print the message and then access this index of 0. So if we print that, then we can see that we got the capital H. Now, since the length of our string is 11, that means that with the first character starting out at 0, our last character would be at index 10. So it's our total length minus 1. So if I was to say print out the location at index 10, the value at index 10, then we can see that we got our D character, which is the last character in that string. Now, if you accidentally try to access an index that doesn't exist, then you'll get an index error. So if we were to say access the index of 11, then we can see that that threw an index error. Now, we can also access a range of characters. So if I just wanted to get the word hello from our string, then we could say that we want 0 and then this colon 5, and we'll explain this. So the first index here is our starting point, and the second index, which is separated by this colon, is the stopping point. Now, one thing a little confusing about this is that the first index is inclusive, which means it's going to include that value, but the second index is beginning. So if we don't put anything there and then colon 5, then we should get this. Okay, so all of the data types that we're going to review are going to have certain methods available to us that give us access to a lot of useful functionality. Now, when I say methods, a lot of people wonder what's the difference between a method and a function, and functions and methods are basically the same thing. A method is just a function that belongs to an object. It's not important to get into the details of that now, but if you hear me say method or function, then you can basically think of those as the same thing for now. So like I was saying, the data types that we'll be going over all have certain methods available to us that give us access to a lot of useful functionality. So let's look at some of these string methods. So we can see here that our hello world text is capitalized, but let's say that we wanted that to be all lowercase. Now to do this, it's just as easy as saying print message, and then to lowercase this, we can say dot lower. Now, when we run this dot lower with these parentheses here, that's running the lower method on the string. So when we run that, we can see that now our hello world has been set to all lowercase. And if we want to do this to uppercase, then it's as easy as changing that lower to upper. If we run that, now we can see that hello world is all uppercase. So now let's say that we want to count a certain number of characters in our string. And to do that, we can use the count method. And the count method actually takes a string as an argument. So we can say message.count. And now we have to pass in an argument. And it has to know what we want to count in our message. So for now, we'll just say count hello. And if we run that, we can see that it returns that the string hello appears in our message one time. But if we instead just passed in a single character as our argument, so I'll pass in an L. If I run that, you can see that we get a 3 because there are 3 L's in our message variable. So if we instead want to find the index of where certain characters can be found, then we can use the find method. So I can come up here, instead of saying .count, I can say .find. And now this takes an argument as well. It's what we want to find. So let me type in world here and run this. And we can see when we run this that it returns a 6. And that's because world starts at the 6th index of our message variable. Now if we try to find a string of characters that doesn't exist, then it will just return -1. So if instead of world I typed in universe and ran that, you can see it returns a -1 because it can't find that anywhere in our message variable. Okay, so now let's say that we want to replace some characters in our string with some other characters. And we can do this with the replace method. Now first I'm going to change this back to printing out our regular message. So I'll just delete these. Now let's try to use our replace method right below where we first set our message variable. And this method takes 2 arguments. First it takes what we want to replace. So first let me just say message.replace. So first it takes what we want to replace. So let's say that we want to replace world. And now the second argument, which is separated by a comma, is what we want to replace world with. So we'll replace world with universe. So now if we run this, then this might be a little unexpected. We can see that it's still printing out hello world. Now the reason our replacement didn't work is because it's not making that replacement in place. It's actually returning a new string with those values replaced. And we'll learn more about return statements when we learn about functions. But basically, we need to set a new variable here to get that return string with those replacements. So I could say something like new message is equal to that original method with this replacement. So now if we set that new variable and instead print that new message and run that, then you can see that now it replaced world with universe. And if you really wanted to make the replacement to the message variable, then instead of making a new message variable, then we can just set this same message variable again. So now we're setting the same message variable equal to that replacement and then printing it out. So if I run that, then we can see that now the message variable had world replaced with universe. And this may look a little strange to set a variable to an altered version of itself, but it's very common and you'll be using that a lot. Okay, so now let's get rid of this replace line here. And now let's look at how we can add multiple strings and concatenate them together. So instead of saying hello world, I'm instead just going to set this equal to hello. And instead of calling this message, I'm going to set this equal to greeting. And just below greeting, I'm going to create a variable called name. And I'm going to set that equal to, we'll just say Michael. And now last line operator. So you're concatenating strings together. It's easy to make mistakes like hello plus. So let's say that we wanted to add to the end of our message exclamation point. And now to fill those using the plus sign, then I do have a detailed in strings was to make string formatting as strings is because you can actually write code within you can do. So dot replace, pull this up here a bit, and the description.
Yeah,
In the next video, we'll be learning how to work.
I'm guessing there is probably not a way to add things to a string like that. It's probably necessary to convert it into a list first.
show you some of the string methods in Python. So the reason why I'm doing this is because it's impossible for any one person to know everything that's available in every language and framework that you use and every library that you use. So in this video, what I hope to do is just help you realize that there are some other options for you available in Python if you weren't aware of them already. So if you're already a master of Python string manipulation, then you probably won't get anything out of this video. But if you're curious to know what most of the string methods are, at least the useful ones, then maybe this video can help. So we're going to start with this string that I have here. I just call it my stir, and we have this sentence: the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And what I'll do is I'll simply print out the result of the sentence. So print my stir, and then what I'll do is I'll run it, and we see the sentence gets printed there. So now what we'll do is we'll manipulate it. So the first one is capitalize. So the first method, capitalize, so capitalize. We'll treat the string like a sentence and capitalize the first letter. So if I run this, nothing should happen because the first letter is already capitalized. But if I were to make this T a lowercase and run it again, then we see the T is uppercase. And if I instead just remove the completely and leave quick, if we run it, we see quick becomes capitalized. So it just takes the first character and it makes it uppercase. So very, very simple. So the next one we'll do is lower. So what lower will do is it will take all the characters in the string and it will turn them into lowercase. So if I run this, so lower, if I run this, we'll see that we have a lowercase t down here, whereas in the original sentence we have an uppercase t. So if I were to make some of these uppercase, like quick brown fox, and run this again, we see everything comes out as lowercase. So it's pretty easy to understand this. But we also have the ability to use upper. So as you can imagine, if lower makes everything lowercase, then upper will make everything uppercase. And let me comment that one out. So now all the characters in the string are uppercase. And of course, it depends on if the character itself can be uppercase or lowercase. If you put in a number, for instance, nothing's going to change because there's no such thing as an uppercase number. But for letters, there are definitely uppercase letters. So that's pretty simple. Let's try another one. Let's try Swapcase. So my stir, and then we'll use Swapcase. And what it does this time is for everything that is capitalized in the original string, it makes it lowercase. And for everything that is lowercase, it makes it uppercase. So we see it just reverses everything. So it's pretty ugly, but this is what it does. It swaps the case quite literally. And then the final one, when it comes to changing the case of the characters, I will talk about title. So I'll run title. And now we see the first letter of every word becomes capitalized. So the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Every single one is uppercase for the first character. So these are very simple to understand and to use. So if you ever have the need to change the case on any of your strings, you may want to consider using those. So now the next ones I want to talk about are the methods that are used for searching inside of a string in a way. So these aren't searches in a sense where like it will look into a string and find like every instance of whatever you pass in. It basically just finds one instance. So it can either find the first one or the last one or starting after some point. But for these, I'll just focus on the first and the last. So before I get to that, first we can do like a count. So it won't return the locations, but it will definitely return the number. So my string has the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So the word the appears twice. So if I search for a count of, let's say he, because the T in the first the is uppercase. So if I just search for he and print this, I see 2 because the letters HE appear twice in the string. And if I look for something else, let's say OV, OG, I don't see anything. Yeah, I don't see anything else. So what's special about this sentence is that it uses every single letter in the alphabet. That's probably why you've seen it in typing programs. But I don't see any other repeated characters. So what I'll do is I'll just search for a single character. So let's say the letter O. So if I look at the string, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 instances of O, but 3 are lowercase. So when we run count on it, we get 3. And if I change this O to an uppercase O and run this again, I get 1 because there's only one uppercase. So that's how count works. It basically just looks in the string and looks for an exact match on the characters. So now we have some that can be true or false. So we can use my stir, and then we can have ends with and starts with. So ends with, if I demonstrate this, you'll understand starts with. So ends with dog and a period. So if I run this, we see true. If I take away that period and run it again, it's false. So basically, it's just looking at the very end of the string and determining if the characters that you passed in match exactly with the end of the string. So when I have that period there, it's true. But when I take away the period, it's false because the period actually ends the string. So if I do the same thing with starts with, it's the same process, but instead of starting at the end, it starts at the beginning. So starts with, if I say the, this should be false because it's a lowercase t. But if I make it uppercase, we see it's true. So very, very simple to use ends with and starts with. So now let's try find. So print, and we'll say my stir find, and we're going to look for he. So I have 2 instances of a he, but we see that it returns the first one. So this t is at 0, and then h is at 1. So let me look for something that is further along in the string. Quick. We see 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it starts quick. So in addition to find, we have our find. So let's try he again and do this. And this time it's 32. So the way this works, it starts at the end and it goes in and it looks for the first instance starting from the end. So here's where it finds he the second time. So find alone looks for the first instance, and then the second find, our find, starts from the end. And then we have index. And we get 1. And then we have our index. And we get 32. So you're probably wondering, what's the difference between find and our index, or find and index? So let me demonstrate that. So I have find he and find quick. So let me change this to something that's not in the string. So cat. So this one will be cat and that one will be cat. So find cat, find index. We'll run it, and we see find returns -1 for the index, whereas index here returns an error, this value error, substring not found. So if I comment this out and run this again, we see find returns -1, so it didn't find the cat at all. And if I comment this one out and bring back index, then we see an error. So that's basically the difference between the two. Find will return -1 if it doesn't find anything, whereas index and our index will raise an error. So those are pretty easy to understand as well. So now the next methods I want to talk about are methods that kind of categorize the string. So what I mean by that is it tells you what's in the string roughly. So for this, I won't use this example sentence. I'll just create strings here. So if I have something like 1, 2, 3, and I say is al num, and I run this, we see true. So what this means is this alphanumeric? Meaning, does this have either numbers or letters in it? If I add like a hash right there and run it, we see it becomes false because it has another type of character in it. So this only supports numbers and letters for true. Anything else, it will return false for is al num, just like that. So we have similar ones, and we can say is alpha, which are ASCII based or not. So certain Unicode characters wouldn't work in that. So I'm not gonna go through all of them, but we have ones like is decimal work. So the next methods I'll talk about are really simple formatting methods, basically just moving things there's a space more just that does the same thing happening on the right, but if I change this to each one, so to like round and t space, but I pass it in directly. Found you may, and let's see, every new line you create a new element. So it's very easy to use, and it's very useful when you're processing.
Yeah, I have no idea what to do. Although the ways I think about doing this seems like they're really stupid. And apparently there isn't a method to just add to the string. I think if there was, they would probably talk about it in the videos. So I think it's gonna have to be the array. Not array, list. Keep confusing the show.
Now we see create program add elements dynamically in list. ठीक है, लिस्ट के अंदर हमें यदि एलिमेंट्स को डायनामिकली ऐड करना है तो व्हाट वी कैन डू, क्रिएट प्रोग्राम टू ऐड एलिमेंट्स डायनामिकली इन लिस्ट. जैसे अभी अपन स्टैटिकली एलिमेंट्स को असाइन कर रहे हैं, वैसे हम लिस्ट के अंदर एलिमेंट्स को डायनामिकली भी ऐड कर सकते हैं. देखो हम कैसे कर सकते हैं, हाउ इट पॉसिबल, ये हम एक प्रोग्राम के थ्रू डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. यहाँ अपन ने नम वेरिएबल ले लिया, इंट इनपुट एंटर नंबर ऑफ एलिमेंट्स फॉर लिस्ट. ठीक है, लिस्ट में आप कितने एलिमेंट्स एंटर करना चाहते हैं वो आप एंटर करिए. ओके, इसके बाद हम यहाँ पर एलिमेंट्स को एंटर कर दिए, इसको अपन ने dlist डॉट py 0, num. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे आप असाइन करते जाओ si इक्वल्स टू इनपुट एंटर एलिमेंट फॉर प्लस इंडेक्स. ठीक है, अपन ने एलिमेंट्स असाइन कर दिया. नाउ वी कैन प्रिंट दीज एलिमेंट्स. हम अब इस इन एलिमेंट्स को हम क्या कर सकते हैं, प्रिंट कर सकते हैं. यहाँ पे जाएगा प्रिंट एस ऑफ. नाउ वी रन दिस प्रोग्राम. ठीक है, नंबर ऑफ एलिमेंट्स मैंने दिया 5 एलिमेंट्स हैं. 0 इंडेक्स में एलिमेंट्स 12, 23, 34, 45, 56. इस तरीके से हम डायनामिकली भी लिस्ट के अंदर एलिमेंट्स को एंटर कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, तो दिस इज कॉल्ड डायनामिक लिस्ट. इसे अपन क्या बोलते हैं, डी लिस्ट भी बोलते हैं. डी लिस्ट इन द सेंस डायनामिक लिस्ट. ओके, अब मैं कुछ प्रोग्राम्स दे रहा हूँ आपको जो बनाना है. देखो, राइट अ प्रोग्राम टू सॉर्ट द एलिमेंट ऑफ लिस्ट. राइट अ प्रोग्राम टू फाइंड इनटू 3 dimension लिस्ट. आपको
Didn't understand anything that I saw.
Hey CS Dojo, in this video I'm going to introduce you to lists in Python. The list is a type of data, just like strings and integers that we've seen so far, and it's used to store a list of things. And it's similar to arrays in some other languages like Java. So let's take a look at one example here. To define a list, you can just write a equals open square bracket 3, 10, -1, close square bracket. And this line means define a new list with the elements 3, 10, and -1 and assign this list to this variable a. And just a quick note here that you can download this sample file by going to csdojo.io/python4. And another quick reminder that you don't necessarily have to use Jupyter Notebook to follow this course. You could use, for example, PyCharm, which is a good IDE for Python. Now let's run the cell, and once we run the cell, a should be defined. So let's print a with print parentheses a, and we see that we get a list with the elements 3, 10, and -1. What if we wanted to add an item to this list? You can do that with a.append parentheses 1. This means append the item, the number 1, to the list A. So this dot notation is a pretty common one, and you'll see more of that later in this course. So this function append is basically a predefined function that you can use on the list data type. So again, that's a.append parentheses 1. Let's execute this cell, and once we print A, you see that the number 1 has been added to this list. So one interesting thing about the Python list, which is different from some other languages like Java, is that you can mix types in a single list. So you could have a list containing numbers as well as a string. Let's see how that works by appending the string hello to the list A with a.append parentheses double quotes hello. And let's print that with print A, execute this cell, and you see that this list now contains hello the string as well as the numbers. A list could even contain another list. So let's see how that works with a.append square brackets 1, 2. So this means create a new list with the elements 1 and 2, and then append it to this list. Let's see how that looks with print parentheses a, and let's run the cell. And now you'll see that we have a bunch of numbers, and then a string, which is hello, and another list within the single list. Okay, what if you wanted to delete an item from this list? For example, the last item. To delete the last item, you can do a.pop parentheses. So we're using the dot notation again here, and pop is another function that's predefined for the list data type. And that's why we can just write a.pop, open parentheses, close parentheses. And to see the result, you can of course print a, and let's run the cell, and you see that a now has the numbers and the string, but not the list because that's popped or deleted. Let's delete the string as well, this hello string with a.pop, which deletes the last item of the list of course, and then let's print a, and you see that it now has numbers only. Now there are many other predefined functions other than pop and append on the list data type, but append and pop are two of the most common ones. Okay, what if you wanted to retrieve a specific item from this list? For example, the first item, the second item, or the third item. To do that, you can just write a square brackets 0, and this means retrieve the item from the list A with the index 0. And in Python, just like in many other languages, the index starts at 0. So the first item in the list has the index 0, and the second item has the index 1, the third item has the index 2, and so on. Okay, so we want to print this item just to make sure we got the right one, but actually in Jupyter Notebook, you don't have to use the print statement every time. You could just write a square bracket 0 here, and when you run the cell, you get the first item in the list. But to keep it consistent, and also to make sure it works in any other platform, for example PyCharm, I'm going to use the print statement every time. Okay, what if you wanted to retrieve the fourth item, this number 1? To do that, you can just do a square brackets 3. So the fourth item has the index 3, and then let's print that, and we get 1. And what if you wanted to change the content of this list? So what if you wanted to change this number 3 to 100? To do that, you can first select that item with a square brackets 0. That's the first item in the list. And then you can assign a new number or any new value to it with a square brackets 0 equals 100. Let's run this cell, and then let's print a again with print parentheses a. And you see that the first value of this list is 100 now instead of 3. Okay, now I'm going to give you a quick exercise problem to practice what you've learned so far. Let's say you have a list with 3 strings inside. So you have b equals square brackets, double quotes, banana, comma, double quotes, apple, comma, and then Microsoft. Can you swap the first value of this list, whose index is of course 0, with the last item of this list? Before I show you my solution to this problem, I'm going to show you a model you can use for thinking about a list in Python. When you have b equals banana, apple, Microsoft, the way you can think about it is that b is going to be sort of like 3 boxes put together, or one giant box, one long box with 3 compartments. And each of those compartments acts like a variable. So each of those refers to a value. In this case, the first compartment refers to banana, and the second element refers to apple, and the third element, of course, refers to the string Microsoft. And I'm going to show you my solution. First, write temp equals b square brackets 0. So we're defining a new variable called temp for a temporary variable, which is going to refer to what b square brackets 0 refers to, which is this one. And then you can write b square brackets 0 equals b square brackets 2. So we're saying the first compartment should now refer to whatever the third compartment refers to. Because like I said, the index for the first item is 0, and the index for the second item is 1, and the index for the third item is 2. So after this line, the first compartment, or the first element, will now refer to what the third compartment refers to, which is Microsoft. And once you have that, you can write b square brackets 2 equals temp, and the third compartment now will refer to what temp refers to, which is banana. As a result, after these pieces of code, we have the desired result. So that's a list with the first compartment referring to the value Microsoft, and the second element being apple, and the third element being banana the string. Okay, let's make sure that method works in code. First, print the current list with print b, and we have banana, apple, and Microsoft. Just like we saw, we'll first define a temporary variable with temp equals b square brackets 0, and then assign the value of b square brackets 2 to b square brackets 0, and then assign what temp refers to b square brackets 2, and then at the end we're going to print b. Okay, that's correct.
Hey, welcome to Draft Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about using functions with lists.
I feel like none of them are gonna talk about the stuff that I'm trying to do.
Python. In Python, a list is one of the most important structures where we can store our information. A list basically allows you to take a bunch of different values and organize them and store them inside of their own little list structure. So down here in my program, you can see I have 2 lists. I have a list of lucky numbers, and this is just a bunch of different numbers, and then I have a list of friends. So this could be like a list of somebody's friends, and it's basically just a bunch of strings with names in them. So these 2 lists are storing a bunch of different values, and what makes lists awesome is not only can I store like this many values, I mean I could store hundreds or thousands or millions of values. And when you're working with a lot of data and a lot of information in Python, these lists are invaluable. So because lists are so important, there's actually a bunch of different functions that we can use with lists, and those functions allow us to do things like modify the lists and get information about the lists. So In this tutorial, I just want to show you a bunch of those functions. We're going to talk about some of the most common and most popular functions that you would use on lists to make them more powerful and make them more easy to use. So the first thing we can do is obviously just print out a list. So down here, I'm printing out this friends list. And when I run my program, you see down here, we're just printing out all the elements in the list. So it's always good to be able to print out all the elements inside of a list. But there's a lot of other functions that we can use. So one function is called the extend function. And the extend function will basically allow you to take a list and append another list onto the end of it. So I could say like friends.extend, and inside of these parentheses, I can pass in the list that I want to add on to the friends list. So I can say like lucky numbers. And now when I print out this friends list, not only is it going to have all the elements in the friends list, it's also going to have all the elements inside the lucky numbers list. You can see down here we have all of our friends, and then we also have the numbers over here. So that's a really easy way to essentially just like add two lists together. We can also just add individual elements onto a list. So I can come down here and I can say friends.append, and this will actually allow me to append another item onto the end of this list. So over here, I could just add another name. So we could say Creed, for example. And now I'm like adding another friend onto the end of this list. So when I run the program, in addition to having the original items that were in the list up here, we also have this additional item at the end. And that append function is always going to add the item onto the end of the list. But let's say that you want to add an item into the middle of the list. So like right here or right here, there's another list function called insert. And insert is going to take two parameters. The first parameter is going to be the index where you want to insert the item. So why don't we insert it here at index position 1? I'm just going to say 1, and then I'm going to type in the name of the element that I want to add. So we can just say like Kelly. And now at index position 1, we're going to have the value Kelly, and all of these other values are going to get pushed up. They're going to get pushed to the right one index position. So now when I run the program, you can see we have Kevin, this new element Kelly, and then all the other elements have been pushed off to the right. We can also remove elements. So for example, let's say I wanted to remove this Jim value. All I have to do is just say friends.remove, and I can just type in whatever element I want to remove. So I want to remove this Jim element. And so now when we run the program, Jim is going to be gone from the list, and we just have these 4 guys left. You can also remove all of the elements from the list. So if I just wanted to completely like reset the list and get rid of everything, I could just say friends.clear, and this is going to give us an empty list. So it'll get rid of every single element inside the list. There's also another really cool method which is called pop, and you can just type out pop like that. And basically what pop's going to do is it's going to pop an item off of this list. So when I click the play button, you'll see here that we're left with Kevin, Karen, Jim, and Oscar. So we basically got rid of the last element inside the list, and that's what pop does. It pops an element off of the list. So basically removes the last element in the list. So we have our list, but let's say that we wanted to figure out if a certain element was in this list, right? If a certain value was in here. So let's say I wanted to check to see if my friend Kevin was in this list. Well, I could say friends.index, and in here I can just pass a value. So I could say like Kevin, and this is going to tell me the index of Kevin. So it'll tell me if Kevin's in the list. So now when I click play, you can see down here it says 0. If I was to say like Oscar in here, for example, now it'll give me the index of Oscar. So that's at 3. But if I put a name that wasn't in here, this list, so it should say 2, which it does. Like lucky numbers dot sort, and then we'll print out lucky numbers, and these should now be in ascending order.
Should be missing something. It can't be this hard to do this problem. Maybe something about the way that I'm thinking about this. Of trying to do with the regex. But I just can't think about another way except by creating different variables. Finding the index of each regex operator, then creating a variable for each one. But I don't think that's the right way to think about how to solve this problem. Maybe doing the empty array again. List, empty list. I think it's append, but I need to put this after I do the if statement, I think. Nice. Finally. I think this works. Yeah, 33 plus this. This one plus this. Oh, let me see if I join them. If it's gonna be. I think it's dot join. I think if I can join them, then the logic for adding the other pattern is gonna be the same, I think. The only difference is gonna be the regex and what stuff I'm gonna do after the regex. I'm trying to think if, because I also need to put a space between, but I can add it at the end the space, I think. We need one space between the operator and the number on the right.
In this last video on string methods, I'm going to show you a little bit about converting between strings and lists. The methods that are in this group convert between a string and some composite data type by either pasting objects together to make a string or by breaking a string apart into its pieces. These methods operate on or return iterables. Iterable is a general Python term for a sequential collection of objects. Iterating or walking through all the members of a collection is a common technique done inside Python. I will include links below this video for more information about Python iterables. Many of these methods return either a list or a tuple, which are very similar collections of ordered objects. They have a couple differences. A list is enclosed within square brackets, and it's mutable, meaning that the contents can change, whereas a tuple, also sometimes pronounced tuple, is enclosed within parentheses and is immutable. This is a very quick introduction on these topics, but you need to know a little bit about what they look like for this next set of methods and their examples. Again, as a note, I'll also include more information about lists and tuples below this video. So the first method you're going to try is .join, which takes an iterable into it. It concatenates strings from that iterable. To start, I'll have you create a list. A list is contained within square brackets. This list will be a sequence of strings. Make sure to open and close each string object with a single quote or double quote, and place a comma in between the objects. So now you've created my list, and you can check its type. It is a class list. How can you use the method join? Well, join works with those iterables. In this case, you can give it a separator. In this case, maybe we'll use, I don't know, let's try a semicolon and a space. That's your separator, which is a string. And since it's a string, you can see all the methods that are there, and join is one of them. And you can see that it'll concatenate any number of strings. So here you can see the example showing joining this list together. So this will be returned as a new string. Let's try it with ours, my list, and see what returns. So it's a single string, again, joined together using this separator. You could have used a comma and left it without a space even. Great. So one kind of interesting thing to think about is that any string is an iterable also. So if you had a string of just a word, and let's say that word is lobster, and right now the type is lobster, it's a string. Okay, what if you were to join, say using a colon, word? It will take all the individual letters that it can be iterated through and create a new string separating them. So one note, if you had a list, and in this case, the list had a mix of types of things, let's say an integer along with a handful of strings, again, the type is definitely a list. What happens if you were to try using this as your separator and join my list too? This one is saying that there is a problem with it. There's an exception, a type error. It expected another string and found an integer instead. So in this case, all three of these would have to be strings in order to do that join. Well, you learned a method earlier that could fix that. In its case, you could say that integer of 23 and have it convert it into a string for us using str. So now, if you were to use my list 3 and join it together, you not end up with that type error. The next method is partition, which takes a string of a separator. It divides a string based upon that separator. The return value is a three-part tuple consisting of the portion preceding the separator itself, and the portion of the string following that separator. Let's say we had a string with egg and spam and a period separating the two. With partition, it's going to separate it into three parts given a specific separator. So let's say our separator in this case is a period. It's going to return three tuples containing the part before the separator itself, and the part after it. Okay, let's see what that looks like. And there you go. Again, you can see the parentheses as opposed to these square brackets indicating this is a tuple and not a list. Kind of neat. If you would have a longer string with these three words separated with $signs, how would partition work here? Oh, T is our new string. So in this case, if you added the double $sign, partition made the partition based upon the first occurrence of that string. Our partition divides a string based upon a separator again. It functions exactly like partition, except that the string is split at the last occurrence instead of the first occurrence of the separator. So starting from the right, like the other R methods you've learned earlier. So our partition would do the same thing, but it would work from the right side. If you were to take T and partition it based on something that's not within the string, like let's say a period, it would simply return the entire string and then an empty string followed by another empty string in your tuple. So here's your string T. And T, our partition, if you were to use a character that's not in the string, would do the reverse. Again, partition works from the left, and our partition working from the right. Next is split. It splits a string into a list of substrings. Without any arguments, split will take your string and divide it into substrings delimited by any sequence of white space. It will return those substrings as a list. If a separator is specified, it will be used for delimiting the split. The max split value by default is -1, which will mean it will split all the way across the entire string. But if a value is put inside max split, it will start from the left side and count up. So in this case, here's a string with words separated by white space, in this case just the space character. If you were to apply split to it, as you can see here, without a separator, the default value is going to split based upon any white space and discard empty strings from the result. So let's try split just by itself, and you can see it returns this list, separating all the words based upon the white space between them. And that white space could be tabs, new lines, or simply just plain old space. If you have a string that uses a period as a separator, split, in that case, if you were to enter in the value, will split based upon that, using that delimiter. If you have something kind of unique with multiple periods, if you were to split this, using that as the delimiter, it will return empty strings as part of your list. So there would be a little string there, another string there. It's still splitting based upon that delimiter. Just be aware, if you have repeating characters, that's how it would behave. Another quick note, if you had a string had multiple characters of white space in between your words, in that case, even though these are repetitions, it will just take it all as one chunk of white space in between. Do one more example here. Create a string named link with real python.com inside of it. And in this case, take that link and split it. The delimiter is period, sure, but this time let's put in the value for max split. Let's say the maximum splits are only 1. That would take it from the left side here, www.realpython.com, and separate the two out. Our split works the same as split. The only thing that has changed is the max split value is counted from the right side. So try out your same link, and this time try our split with it. And you can see that it shows almost the entire same information, except for it's going to split starting from the end, with a max split of 1. And there you can see the separation starting with the last period. this. This is an excerpt from Moby Dick.
Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of Coffee Time Python, when I'll be showing you quick tips about Python. What we're going to look at in this video is something that I constantly forget and confuse, which is converting a list to a string and string to a list. So let's get started. Okay, so to convert a list to a string, it's actually pretty easy. So let's first define our list, which will be like, I don't know, my list, and let's define a few strings inside, maybe apples, bananas, maybe oranges. And now to actually convert that list to a string, what we can do is, let's print it straight away. You should do something like this. You define a string, which is like a delimiter. So this will tell how you'd like to see your string after converting from the list. So let's say we want to convert that list and show it as a comma-separated string, like this. And then you do join and put the list there. Okay, and let's see how it looks. There you go. Maybe let's make it bigger so you can see. We have apples, comma, space, bananas, comma, space, oranges. Basically, that's it. That's how you convert a list to a string. You can put any string in here, for example, dashes. If you run this now, you'll see apple dash bananas dash oranges. Now let's convert the string to a list. So let's first define some string. Let's say, welcome to the new Coffee Time Python series. Okay, so we have our text, and now what we want to do is to convert it to a list. Let's say, let's convert it by space, so the separator will be space. So let's print it, and then you do text dot split. And if you leave it like that, it will by default it will use space as a separator. So if you run this, you can see welcome to the new welcome to the new Coffee Time Python series. Each word is a separate list element. Maybe let's comment this out. Okay, let's comment this out. Yeah, so it's basically like that. You put a string and then you run split on it, and in here as a params you can pass separator. And there's another one I'll show you in a second. So let's say we want to split it by, maybe not by a comma, for example. If you had a string like that, let's see what happens when we
So it's just use join, I think. It's the same thing I did before. I forgot to print. Yeah, but here it is. Yeah, that's the issue I was talking about before. Is that even if I get it right, it's gonna be one on top of the other instead of one on the right side of the other. I also need a new line after the number. To add a new line. And that's gonna be tough as well. Let me copy this stuff I did so far, so don't lose it. So I have to think about, after adding the new line, before the plus sign or minus sign, how can I tell it to add a new line after the number, the subsequent number? Because list of words is gonna be and then a list, not string. Maybe I can create sort of a flag variable and then increase the number. So every time that this condition becomes true, I increase the variable by 1. Then I check for the number after that, based on that variable. Yeah, this might be a solution. So I make I here equals 0. Then I'll make something like I need to find another name. Even even num is fine. I think the regex for finding the number would be this one, if I'm not mistaken. The thing is, I also need. No, actually, that's right. Rematch. Now I need to create another variable, I think. Let's make L equals 1. That way the I is always behind. No, it's probably not gonna work, now that I think about it. So the first time I is gonna become 1, then right after that is gonna push this and L is gonna become true. So I is always gonna be behind L. Yeah, but it's not gonna match the first time. That's the problem. So how can I make it true? Because if I just leave this without the end, then it's gonna add before as well. It's gonna add a new line on the first number as well. Well, let me run it like this and see what happens. Yeah, that's the issue now. Is that all of them? Uh, Maybe I did this the wrong way on the beginning. And the better way was to separate them first. Yeah, maybe if I run on the first list instead of this one, then it will work. Let me check. Instead of doing a list of arrays, list of words, I'm gonna do problems directly. Well, then the word is gonna be a list instead. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do 2 loops, I think. Then it might work. Because problems is a list of strings. Yeah, it just gave me the list. So let me try to do another for loop. Yeah, now it's one by one. Because I'm looping through the strings. So every time that it finds a number, it adds a new line. But didn't I put the regex to count as... No, I guess because it... Maybe I should do append word instead. No, yeah, that's not gonna solve it also. So I guess it has to be the other way I was doing. Oh, maybe I have to change letter instead. That's the problem. It's also not gonna work, probably. Hmm. Why is this regex not working? Don't understand. It's supposed to only match if there's a bigger number. Oh, it's because I'm appending letter. That's the problem. Oh, it shouldn't be a problem because I'm gonna join them later. So even though if this list is a list of each word, it shouldn't matter. It's because I'm using match here. Yeah, still the same thing. So I think the only way is the way that I was doing before. I think I'm gonna look for the way she did it, the Faraday Academy woman. I think I'm almost there, but I know the last parts I'm not gonna have any idea how to do. It might take a long time as well to put the things on the right side. That's probably gonna be really hard. I'm also thinking about that I might have started this the wrong way, so I might have to redo everything. I tell it to only do it after the plus or minus sign. That is the question. I wonder if this passes any test already. I think it's probably gonna pass some at least. At least one. This one I think is right. I'm not sure. The clarity here. Take this one. Another thing is, how can I test this? If there is no... So how do I submit it? Yeah, when you should publish this? Publish? The true past of 8. Which one passed? Which one's passed? So the only contained digits is not working. No, it's 4 digits, not. Oh, but I put here 4. No, it's 4 or equal to 4, I think. Let's see if this passes now. Same thing. Oh, maybe it's because of the messages. Let me see. No, it's still failing. That's weird. Let's see the test that they gave to see what's wrong. Can't, no. I think it has to be Control Shift C. So. Let me just type. It's easier. No, but it is working. So what's the problem? Let's see if I can clean this. It's easy just to refresh the page. Oh, maybe it's what I'm returning here. Well, but it should work anyway for the mistakes, for the error messages. Maybe it's because I have to return something. But it should be returning here. That's the weird part. It seems to be working with the Python tutor things. Control Shift C. Yeah, that's strange. Works here. Maybe if I just put this input here. Oh, it's a list of a list. Maybe that's the problem. It's calling with a list of a list, not just a list. Yeah, that's the problem. To be honest, I don't want to spend more time on this problem. I think I'm gonna see the solution from the woman, then off stream, then I'm gonna try to solve it again, and then I'm gonna try to do the next challenge. So yeah, see you.